Welcome to the SBCA podcast, Component Connection, where we explore the people, ideas, trends, and innovations shaping the structural framing industry. Regardless of how you touch this industry, we're glad you're here. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, I'm Sean Shields, Director of Strategic Partnerships for SBCA, and I'll be your host for this episode of Component Connection. I'm joined by our very own Abby Langenberg, Director of Business Development and Member Engagement. We just got done exhibiting at the Pacific Coast Builders Conference, or PCBC, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the value of being here at the show. Abby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Sean. It was a great week at PCBC.
They sure jammed a lot in just a couple of days, right? Just like the PCBC show.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So this was our first time at PCBC, and this was your first time being on a show floor that isn't BCMC. What was your initial thoughts?
Yeah, so this was my first show floor as an exhibitor ever. So it was a very interesting experience being on the other side of it, whereas BCMC were hosting it. So I really just found a lot of value in getting to experience a show as an exhibitor. But not just that, I think PCBC in and of itself, while it's a little bit of a smaller show, it packed a lot of punch in those couple of days that we were there. I think we had a really diverse group of people that stopped by our booth, and we had a lot of good conversations about using components and building practices, and a lot of people that stopped by our booth already used them, which was really a surprise for me, but also really refreshing to hear that people are actively looking for that as a solution in their building practices. And we even had a member stop by and talk to us. So that was really exciting to see some of our members at the PCBC show.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. There was definitely diversity in the people walking the show floor. When we went to exhibit at AIA or NCSEA, those kinds of shows, like that was definitely architects. Like everybody was architect or architect adjacent. At NCSEA, pretty much everybody walking the show floor was a structural engineer. This show had a great deal of diversity. You had builders, you had developers, you had building designers, and then you also had component manufacturers and everybody else in the sort of the builder's supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
The conversations were interesting, right? It was nice to not have to explain what a truss was, but at the same time, just trying to figure out like, well, why did they come to the show and what are they trying to get out of it? And how do we fit into that? There was one group we met with that were educators, and they were just looking for any and every opportunity to find people who would provide industry knowledge through presentations and coming to be speakers in front of their classrooms. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I think it was a very diverse group. And I think, it was very different than being at, let's say, the Innovative Housing Showcase in DC, where you get a lot less people in the industry. And so you are having to start from scratch. What is a truss and what does that do for a building? It was nice to have those conversations starting from, we use trusses. Why should we use floor trusses and wall panels too?
Yeah. Well, beyond the show floor, we also hosted an education session at PCBC. We interviewed a national builder and talked about how to understand total cost of a project and how components reduce overall costs. As you sat in the audience and sort of watched the room and listened to Alex and I, what were some of your takeaways?
I think my biggest takeaway was just how many people were open to the idea of comparing total cycle time cost of a project rather than just a lumber package to components, because I think that's, one of the biggest hurdles that we come to when we're talking with builders of wanting to implement more components into their construction methods is components are too expensive for me. And I think that it was really refreshing to hear from a builder themselves that was ready and has been jumping in with both feet to say, we absolutely believe that this is the future of the housing industry. This is where we see our business going next. This is how we can improve our business. This is the next step for, improving by that much more. I think a big part of what I loved to see looking around the room was other builders nodding their heads when we talked about how components can decrease the overall cycle time of the construction project. And not just that, but talking about the trades also involved in that, right? I think that's really a big piece of this next step in convincing builders to use components is also looping in the inspection times, the trades that are coming into the house, the corrections that you may have to make after you build the home. So I think that it was really a great thing to be able to sit there and watch as the builders engaged and asked questions about how the builder was using components and what they saw from all of their studies. And then not just that, but having a national home builder that was willing to go onto an education stage and do all of this education with us, I think was really encouraging for me to see.
I like what you said there. The questions that we had afterwards did indicate that they were listening and they were really curious to know more about sort of the data that Alex had collected. And there wasn't really doubt. It was just, that's really interesting. You had that robust of a data set. It's really curious. And what are all the things that you looked at? How did you factor in X, Y, or Z? Just listening to some of the questions that they posed to him after the whole session was over and we're just standing by the side of the stage. It was really clear that there were several builders who attended the session that really wanted to take a deeper dive with Alex on what he had uncovered as they had experimented with greater and greater use of componentization, including, wall panels and floor trusses. And I think also just delivering that message of moving beyond the framing trade, but into your MEP trades and looking at how it impacts those trades when it comes to installing infrastructure into, the open web floor trusses, for example, so they don't have to drill. And in watching the audience sort of respond to like, yeah, we don't really have a good way of thinking about how to capture that. But I think Alex provided some insights as to how they could start trying to capture some of that data. Okay, so we also got invited to a dinner hosted by the Housing Innovation Alliance and the software company Hierarch. The venue was pretty fancy. We sat at different tables, you and I. I'm just curious, can you share a little bit about the conversations you had and what you took away from that kind of networking event?
Yeah, absolutely. I was really blown away by how diverse my table was. I don't know about you, Sean, but my table had everybody from spray foam installation to SpaceX tech people to capital investors to a California builder. So we had quite the array of topics to discuss at our table. I mean, a lot of different experiences to kind of take away. But I think what was most valuable was just having a table of people that are looking for solutions to housing affordability, to housing shortages, and really seeing that there are a lot of people that are looking for innovation that's easily accessible in the housing industry. They're looking for a better way to build. And I think that is such an encouraging thing to see. I think especially as we move forward into BCMC time, it's good information to bring back to our component manufacturers to be able to say, people are looking for your solution that you are offering. Let's get it out there to them. How can we help you do that? So I think that it was a really fruitful conversation to just see where everybody else was at in that fight towards better housing options for people.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, the diversity really was impressive. At my table, I had somebody from the city government of Charlotte. So that really guided a lot of discussions about the constraints that large municipalities like Charlotte, North Carolina face in trying to zone correctly, to work through and make their regulations more efficient, to try to house all the population that they have that's continually flowing into the city year after year. It was really fascinating to just pick somebody's brain who's been there for 20 plus years on how they're trying to solve some of these things. There was another guy at my table who had made a lot of money in AI and now had invested in a very cutting edge building material and a different sort of approach to construction using that material, both in the shell of the structure, but everything that goes in the structure. And I think it just drove home the point that at a place like that, all ideas were on the table. Everybody's trying to solve the same problem, which is how do we make housing more attainable for more people across the US? That person's solution is never going to be the mainstream solution, but is it part of the solution? I'm not going to weigh in on that, but it is interesting that for our industry, which provides, I think, the mainstream solution when it comes to moving some things out of the traditional site-built space, there's a lot of people trying to figure that out. And I think the sooner our industry exerts itself to a greater extent to be the solution, I think the less these fringe ideas will crop up, honestly. Yeah. So interesting, a very interesting dinner for sure. So then finally, Abby, it's probably important to note that the show floor was interesting. The education session was good. The networking was good as well. But the main reason for SBCA to be exhibiting at PCBC was not necessarily to have great success in any one of those areas. It was really to begin building relationships with the organization that puts PCBC on, the California Building Industry Association. So that's the large home builder organization in the state of California that put on PCBC. And of course, then there's also the leading builders of America, which represent the 12 largest home builders in the US. They call PCBC their own when it comes to a trade show. I mean, that's similar to how, choosing to exhibit and be there, be in that space, contribute as much as we could while we were there. It's kind of what we ask of our suppliers at BCMC, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big piece of it is being in the conversation. I can send you emails all day long, but it is not ever going to be the same result as having that in-person conversation and making those in-person connections. I think one thing I consistently hear back from our exhibitors is just how valuable they find the brainstorming on the show floor of just talking to component manufacturers and even other suppliers about, hey, what is the biggest problem you're facing in your business right now? What can we help solve for you? I think that those partnerships are just so valuable, and those conversations are just hard to find other places other than, standing face to face and having that level playing field of we're all here to learn and we're here to get better. And how do we do that together? Because I may have a piece of your puzzle that you don't know that I have, and vice versa, where you may have a piece of information that I need to really make whatever I am doing that next level of greatness. So I think that's a huge piece for me of things that I consistently hear from our exhibitors and our suppliers for BCMC and the value that they see in that. And I think that just from our couple of conversations at PCBC, I think that trade shows are a really good way to do that.
I love what you're saying there. It's one of those, you can't have those valuable conversations if you're not in the room to have them. It's really important to seize the opportunities when they come along. And BCMC is a huge opportunity for anybody in our supply chain to interact with component manufacturers and SBCA staff and to build relationships with both of those groups. And just like that, PCBC for us is a great way for us to build relationships with builders, building designers. PCBC is interesting. It's different than IBS. It's more of a buyer's show than it is a marketing show. It's clear that the people that show up at PCBC, they're looking for solutions. It felt very much like BCMC, where the people walking the show floor are looking at what should I be buying? What should I be using? What concept should I be taking home? And that's the right place for us to be on the show floor having those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another piece too that I hear from our component manufacturers is BCMC is a great place for them to kind of do some nationwide market research almost, where they have conversations with other component manufacturers from everywhere, because we do get component manufacturers from every state. And I think that is just such a valuable thing in and of itself, to be able to talk to people who are boots on the ground in those different areas. And you can hear it from the source itself of, hey, what's going on in your market? What does that look like for you? What challenges are you having right now? And how are you facing them? Because the US market is so big and so diverse, I think that information gets lost a lot of times. And I think that BCMC is a great place to be able to come and to have those conversations where there's not fear of competition necessarily, but there is an idea of collaboration and that spirit of helpfulness. I think as our exhibitors and our component manufacturers are having those conversations about what they're seeing, that really help our members improve their businesses.
Abby, I think you're exactly right. Well, thanks for spending the week with me here in San Diego at PCBC, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I also want to thank everyone else for listening to this episode of SBCA's podcast, Component Connection. If you've enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please like it and share with others. Stay up to date and in the know by subscribing to Component Connection on whatever platform you use most.
Thanks for listening to Component Connection, brought to you by SBCA. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore in a future episode, email us at podcast@sbcacomponents.com.